Hi everyone, welcome to the first video on this channel. Today we're going to be talking about the top 10 strongest characters in the Dragon Ball Z manga. This is not going to be some sort of arbitrary power level video that you've seen before. This is going to be a strict ranking of 10 to 1. I'm going to be including all forms that are considered a different character. So this means that like Super Saiyan Goku and Super Saiyan 3 Goku won't have different spots, but something like Super Buu and Kid Buu will have different spots. I think it makes the video more interesting, and it allows for a few more contentious placements to be allowed rather than just having one spot for who I consider the strongest Buu, and we'll get into that. So the canonicity of Dragon Ball is always a little bit up in the air because there's so many sources that all sometimes have contradictions with each other or just completely different canons from each other. So just to make it 100% clear, I am using the original manga, the Daizenshu, and then a few other manga-only guides like El Manga Legendaria. With all that being said, let's hop into number 10. Fat Buu is a pretty important character when it comes to Buu Saga scaling, if it wasn't obvious. He essentially acts as the bar between Cell Saga scaling and Buu Saga scaling. What I mean by that is, he essentially beats the shit out of everybody who is at least comparable to Cell Saga scaling. So he beats the shit out of Dabura, who is arguably stronger than Cell. He beats the shit out of Majin Vegeta, who is objectively stronger than Cell. And he beats the shit out of Gohan, who is arguably equal to Cell. And from there, we know the limits of his power. He would have lost to Super Saiyan 3 Goku if he had gone all out, but that's what Buu's scaling is. There are two major aspects that put Super Buu significantly above Fat Buu, but below everyone else who comes later. The first is that the moment Super Buu transforms, almost everyone immediately senses that there's a difference in power, and Piccolo specifically notes that his body is just better at fighting than Fat Buu's is. But from a more strict scaling sense, base Gotenks originally loses to Fat Buu, and then Trunks and Goten train to get stronger, to the point where they believe that a base Gotenks would be equal to Fat Buu and that a Super Saiyan would defeat him. But then the moment they actually fight Super Buu, he literally does not take any damage from their attacks in base and literally no-sells them. And then they can't start dealing damage to him until they become a Super Saiyan. This leads nicely into the next spot. Gotenks is the first character on this list who you can really see the fast pacing of the Buu Saga from. What I mean by that is that he's only around for a few chapters and really only has one fight, and because of that we can't really do any nuanced scaling with him. Really just determining if he's stronger than Super Buu or not, and I really do believe he is. Even as a Super Saiyan he was harming him, and Goku's statement really seems to imply that he would have won, if not for the fact that he had defused and then lost his Super Saiyan 3 transformation. I know a lot of people like Ultimate Gohan and consider him the strongest non-fused character in the Buu Saga, but as you can see from my previous placements, from what I'm implying, I don't think that's the case. He still has very good scaling, he's stated to be stronger than Gotenks, and was absolutely bullying Super Buu. But as statements made later show, he's definitely not as powerful as a lot of people hype him up to be, and by the end game, there are a lot of characters that are stronger than him. I think a lot of people forget how much of a fucking menace Buutenks is, and how he represents another huge jump in power between the fights that come before him and the fights that come after him. Immediately after fusing, he starts beating the absolute fuck out of Gohan and leaves him in the fucking Yamcha pose after only a few exchanges. The only reason Gohan doesn't die here is because he gets healed. So once again, you need to understand that everything after this point is a really significant jump in power. Without a lot of research, I can totally understand how a lot of people think that Buuhan is the strongest villain character by the end of the Buu Saga, but I'm going to try and prove that that is absolutely not the case. This debate has really recently flared up because a lot of people were tweeting at a screenwriter on the Dragon Ball anime his opinions on scaling. While one, this doesn't have anything to do with the manga, I still think it's, when discourse like this happens, it's important to look at all the information we have here. So firstly, Buuhan is obviously stronger than Buutenks. He absorbs a stronger character than Gotenks, that being Gohan. and then he states that he's stronger than he's ever been. Buutenks actually does make a similar statement, but this does not actually have any influence on Kid Buu's scaling, which we'll get into, because he considers Kid Buu a different person. For a lot of people, this is probably the most controversial placement on this list, having Goku and Kid Buu being this high. I put them together because their scaling is essentially the same. The only difference is that Goku is indeed weaker than Kid Buu, but he's still stronger than everyone else who comes before him on this list. For someone who might have only watched the anime or only just read the manga, this information might not be obvious to you because it's not incredibly implied directly in the manga itself. Pretty much every single statement comes from different guidebooks who all unanimously pretty much agree that Goku and Kid Buu are the strongest warriors in the Buu saga, save for two exceptions, which I'll get into. Another source also says that Buu as a character continuously gets stronger over time, implying that the major iterations of Buu are getting consecutively stronger, which would put Kid Buu over Buuhan, Buuhan over Buutenks, Buutenks over Super Buu, etc. This is pretty much the most forgotten form of Buu, but he's arguably the strongest one we see in the entire series. For those who don't remember, this was like the roided out buff Buu that appeared momentarily as Super Buu was transforming into Kid Buu. The reason he's this high is that El Manga Legendario considers them different forms between Kid Buu and this buff Buu, and simply says that he's a more muscular and even more violent version of Kid Buu. This serves as an explanation as to why in a different part of the book, it says that Kid Buu is not the strongest, implying that simply, Buff Buu is a amped up version of Kid Buu, and a different transformation, and thus the strongest Buu. While I think even some of the most uneducated scalers will agree that Vegetto is the strongest character in Z, there are some people who think that actually Kid Buu and Goku are still stronger than him in the manga, which absolutely is not the case. There's just even more databook statements saying that Vegetto is the strongest warrior, and which makes sense is that the previous statement simply did not take into account Vegetto because he was a temporary fusion rather than a permanent character. Regardless if you actually think if Buuhan is actually stronger than any form of Kid Buu, Vegetto is obviously still stronger than him as well, and thus, regardless of your scaling, is the unrivaled number one of Dragon Ball Z. If you actually made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I kind of did this in the spur of the moment and really wanted to test out my editing and recording skills, so thank you so much. If you think I'm wrong or have counter arguments, I'd love to hear them. I want to make more videos like this, and maybe do this as a side hobby. If you have more ideas of videos you want me to make, please let me know.